All right, so by community vote, community selection, today we'll be cracking the Laphroaig Oak Select Isla single malt Scotch whiskey. This is 40% ABV, 80 proof. It is chill filtered, but is natural color. That is, I guess, the situations is chill filtered, but natural color. And this is non-age statement, matured in ex-sherry butts, ex-Oloroso sherry butts. First fill ex-bourbon, quarter casks, and ex-sherry Pedro Menez hogsheads. So smaller sherry hogsheads, larger Oloroso sherry butts. First fill ex-bourbon quarter casks, and then all of those things blended and finished 6 months in new charred oak, virgin oak, if you will. This is kind of like the easygoing Laphroaig. It is the cheapest bottle you can get. It's around the same price. Like, for example, I paid the same for this Aberfeldy 12 as this one. So it's kind of like their entry bottle a little bit. It doesn't have an age statement. But it is probably like the smoothest of their offerings because it's lower alcohol. And you have a lot of like sweet casks going on here. Again, you have small ex-sherry hogsheads, XPX sherry hogsheads. You have sherry butts. You have first fill ex-bourbon quarter casks, really small barrels. And again, you're finished in a virgin oak barrel. So probably this one will be like the smoothest and most approachable of Laphroaig's offerings, and it's at an approachable ABV. So it kind of would make sense that if you're new to this brand and you were going for the entry level bottle, this would make a lot of sense considering its specs. But of course, we have to consider that. We have to consider that since this is all kind of finished in a new charred oak barrel, probably, if I were to guess, again, PX barrels are pretty expensive. You know, I have to guess that probably these are not like the most premium barrels. These are, you wouldn't want, like, if you had something maturing in an ex-sherry Pedro Menez hogshead, you probably wouldn't want to cover that up with a new charred oak barrel unless it wasn't doing the best. So that being said, it's probably not like terrible. It's probably someone was like, well, this barrel's okay, but it's not like good enough for our best offerings. It's not so shit that we need to like teaspoon it and send it to the blending house. But probably it's not the top tier juice. It's the lowest, the cheapest one you can buy. It's been refinished in a very aggressive barrel. And of course it's a low proof. That was a sick pop. So it's probably, you know, priced accordingly. At the government establishment that I purchased this at, it was 72 Canadian dollars. That was the price. And that's including taxes. All right, so here's the color of it. It's slightly deeper than like a pale 10. So it's not too bad. And again, we have a mix of Oloroso sherry butts, sherry PX sherry hogsheads, and first fill ex bourbon quarter casks. Again, finished 6 months in new charred oak. So, and then diluted down to 40% alcohol. So this is this is a natural color for that mix of things, but there's so many different caskings going on here that um, it's hard to like say, oh, this or that about the color, but this is the color it came out at after all of these different colored expressions got blended and finished and diluted and a lot of processes. This is where we're at, which is a pretty reasonable color. That being said, the coloration strikes me like kind of odd. It's like a slightly deeper yellow hue to me. Urine color with barnyard afternotes. Yeah, it's for some reasons coming across like as a slightly deeper hue to me than I would expect. I don't mean like closer to orange, but almost like more straw yellow than like a vibrant yellow. It's kind of interesting. I don't feel like I've seen anything quite this color before. And again, this is a brand new crack, so it's going to be strong probably on the smoky elements. But that being said, of the Laphroaig offering, this is probably the most tame. That being said, being non-age statement, it's possible that there's some younger juice in here, which might be a little bit more voracious, that's tamed by some of the barrel impact. Unlike, say, for example, the 10-year-old would have at least 10 years on it. This might have less. But I'm assuming all those sweet barrels will probably make it quite approachable. And again, the proof is lower. It's definitely immediately characteristic as Laphroaig to me. It smells like Laphroaig. There's a good wood smoke aspect to it. But I'm definitely getting in there to like some of those like lighter fruit characteristics. Like definitely orchard fruit hits for me. We'll call it. We'll call it apple fruit. Apple fruit and campfire. I'm trying to let go after where the sherry is. Because the sherry's in there, and apparently it's all new charred oak finished, which, man, I'm surprised actually that this is NCO finished. It doesn't immediately strike me as something that was virgin oak matured or virgin oak finished. So that's kind of interesting. Never really gotten sherry out of this. Yeah, so that's the thing is, again, we don't know for sure the percentages, right? So that's something that you have to consider. We do know all the whole thing was finished in new charred oak, but we don't know like of the blend how much of it is first fill ex bourbon quarter casks, how much of it is Oloroso sherry butts, how much of it is Pedro Jimenez hogsheads. My guess is probably like there's really almost no Pedro Jimenez hogshead in here. Maybe only enough that they could write it on the label. Maybe they picked, you know, their the top 10% of their bottom 20% Pedro Menez hogsheads and put them in the blend just so they could say. But I don't even feel like it's 10%. It could be like 2%. But there's some amounts. Yeah, it's really hard to get. I'm looking for like raisins, dates, dried fruits. Um, also like plum would probably be in this ballpark, or even if you wanted to go like dark cherries or anything like that. But for me, it's like very faint. Um, it's like whisper tier. There's some amount of sherry. It's like whispery, but it's hard to get into that past the smoke and other fruity aspects. I'm not sure if you gave me this blind if I would really pick this out as any kind of sherry maturation, but I think if you go into it with your headspace, like, hey, there's sherry in here, you can find some dried fruit at the bottom of this. But it's hard. Orchard, lemon, Band-Aid, peat smoke. Yeah, peat smoke for sure. Yeah, I like lemon too. That's a good note. And definitely I think a light orchard fruit. You can call it apples, pears, or what have you. I don't really get hit with the like Band-Aid note on the nose of this one. But it is maybe slightly medicinal. There's a bit of a medicinal quality. I'm not going to put it on Band-Aid for me, but again, this is a neck pour of this bottle, so it could be related to that. All right, so we're going to try it on the palate. Laphroaig Oak Select. Slash va. Hmm. You definitely get the Laphroaig Peak character. It's all in with the Laphroaig Peak character. You get the wood smoke. You get the grassiness, the earthiness, the vegetal character. I really was expecting to come into this and have it be a lot sweeter. Like to have some kind of like. I really can't believe this is new charred oak finished. If you, I blind, I would never guess that this is virgin oak finished. There's no way I would ever guess that. It is a little bit thinner than like the quarter cask, but you get like all the same notes. I feel like it's hitting a lot of the same notes that you get from like Laphroaig quarter. But man, the sweetness is not there. The fruit's hard to find on the palate. Is a bit lighter in flavor intensity, and that's that 40% alcohol kind of being like, hey, it's approachable. It's easy drinking. We're not going to be very aggressive, but it might have come at the expense of getting some additional fruits on the palate. The palate for me was kind of like all your typical Laphroaig peat notes, but very approachable about them, not aggressive, very smooth. The least challenging of probably Laphroaigs I've ever drank. Definitely smoky. Yeah. Yeah, those earthy medicinal notes, absolutely. These are all very typical, very watery. Yeah, so it's definitely thinner. Um, Definitely getting some more kind of like light fruit character off of this nose. The sherry is like nowhere. Um, are we sure this is virgin American oak? I almost want to look again. uh, are you sure it's not a refill American oak? um, like, I don't get like the vanilla thing. I don't really get like any really super oaky components. Um, the virgin oak is not telling me anything right now. You know? You know what I mean? Finished in virgin American oak barrels. Really? Lemon custard on the second smell. I don't think I get it that sweet. I do like lemon as a note, but it's not that sweet to me. At least no one has had sex with the barrel. That is guaranteed. That's guaranteed. No one has had sexual relations with this barrel. It is virgin. I can see where you're coming from. I can see where you're coming from. It's kind of like a lemon, maybe a bit of a vanilla thing going on in there. I can see where you're coming from. That's what they all say. That's what they all say. I did not touch that bunghole. Scotch or Irish whiskey? This is Isla single malt Scotch whiskey. Chub Tuden. Yeah, I'm just man. And I think this lends to the idea that again, maybe these are not the premium barrels, you know? Because again, for something that has some amount of ex sherry, Oloroso sherry butts, or ex Pedro Jimenez hogsheads in it, that sherry is buried deep. Um, it's buried deep in there. I do think if you really hunt for it, you can get like dried berries. I think that's in there, but it's really at the back. Like to me, it's like dry, shriveled up blueberry, raspberry kind of thing. But it's really deep in there. You have to go hunting for that. I do like dried raspberry though. I think I can get that out of it. Um, that's very difficult. No berries, yeah. And it could be like, oh, I'm starting getting that vanilla though. That vanilla's kind of popping a little bit. It's not the worst. The thing that my major complaint about it right now is, let's ignore that we were told that there was sherry in it and pretend that we don't know what it is. It's not that bad, despite the fact that you have a sherry expectation. If you ignore the sherry expectation, it's not that bad. The problem is the intensity. The intensity is not great, right? It's just a little bit too thin. Definitely no sherry on the palate. Like none. The finish is maybe a little bit on the short end. I would call this like short plus. Maybe medium minus, but short plus I think is okay. It finishes a little too quick for me. That being said, you do get like those typical like smoky notes, a little bit of oakiness, just a little bit of fruits I think on the finish, but it goes out way too fast for me. Like it's already gone. This definitely would give you a good taste, I think, of the Laphroaig profile, though. Like, I think it hits the Laphroaig profile. And if you were, like, new to Isla Scotches that are heavily peated, this might come off a lot more aggressive than it would be for someone who has had plenty of peated whiskeys. So while we might lament a little bit on the intensity here, again, it literally says on this box, our most laid back expression. So for someone first going into it, these peat notes might be very aggressive for them. So you can kind of understand maybe that's the target for this kind of like entry range bottle. But probably the more I'm into this, the more it kind of feels very similar to Laphroaig Quarter Cask, but like a very like thin version of it. Like I think the Laphroaig Quarter is very similar to this, but it's a higher proof, a little bit more intense. Whatever a slight sweetness that the sherry adds to this is like not, it's not really enough that it's like worth very much. It kind of feels like this is mostly first fill expert and quarter cask kind of influence here. Shortens too watery, yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of sweetness on the finish. Let's see if I can find ash for you. For me, like Lagavulin is very clearly ashy. This one not so ashy for me personally, but that could be how I interpret it. So I get some wood smoke. There's a little bit of fruit in there, some earthiness. I can kind of see what you might call ash on this, yeah. To me, it's like lighter than the earth note. I could see some vanilla too. It's not like unknown, but it's not, it's very like low down on the like, we'll say list of flavors. Bitter smoke taste for me is ash. Yeah, see, I usually call that earth. Um, to me, that's like an earth note. Now that's different. So there's a few different notes that are like bitter peat related notes. For one, for me is like earth, like literal soil, like dirt. Then there's another one that's like a very overly charred burnt log, like you were like had like one of those black, like if you're having a campfire and one of the logs is like completely black charcoal, like a bitter black log note. And sometimes I use the term creosote for that. And then there's one that's like ashy. So for me, this one isn't really nearly as ashy as like the Lagavulins are very ashy. That one is like ashtray in your mouth, kind of ashy. So this one isn't quite that ashy, but you could get some ash out of this, yeah, for sure. You can interpret some of those kind of lighter peat notes that have to do with like the bitterness as ash. Floral earthiness, yeah. The the Laphroaig stuff is sometimes a little bit interesting because some percentage, I can't remember what the percentage is. Maybe I can find it real easy. Some percentage of their malt is their own peat. So I don't know if it's like 10% or something like that. So it's a little bit different than like something that's like entirely Port Ellen peat. But it would be way less floral than like peat from Orkney, for example. That one's like very floral. I don't know if you ever had Highland Park, but the peat notes out of Highland Park are so very floral and much less like woody or um, not necessarily less earthy, but it's like there's less like decayed wood in it. It's more like decayed heather, right? So you kind of get that in the flavor. Long before I was really into Scotch, didn't like it. Yeah, it's going to revisit. The 12 is not hasn't been my favorite expression, but we have some other offerings to try pretty soon. And again, yeah, I think at this point the prominent notes for me are like kind of like that orchard fruit is like what stands out the most. A little bit of like that vanilla, um, a little bit of that citrus. I'm not really getting the medicinal note, but the vanilla is definitely hitting me now that most of the smoke is kind of like out of it for me. Yeah, this one just it's a little bit on the thin side. It's very approachable though. I will say that it's very approachable. Um, it may be more approachable than anything that like that you can get in a Lagavulin. Like it's probably more approachable than a Lagavulin offering. Um, it's probably more approachable than anything that Ardbeg offers. Um, it's almost like a little bit more intense than like a Bemore would be. But to be clear, I probably prefer this over like Bemore 12. Um, it's a little bit peatier. The flavor profile isn't quite the same. It doesn't have the rubber. Um, but I'd be pretty comfortable. Like if someone had never had an Isla peated Scotch before, and they were like, "Hey, I really want to try something heavily peated, or I've had like a lightly peated. Where can I go without like blowing my socks off?" This wouldn't be a bad bottle to go to. That being said, I feel like after you purchase this bottle and get through it on your first, we'll say, experience with this kind of a whiskey, you're probably not repurchasing this. That would be my guess. Um, it's probably like, hey, this is a good intro, but um, need more out of this,